Well, good morning and welcome to the first day of fall, the vernal equinox today. My name is Nathan Brostrom, and I've been a member of All Souls for 20 years now. My wife and I raised 6 kids in the parish. They're now mostly on the East Coast, unfortunately, but they still come back and consider this their church home. I'm also on the vestry, and in that capacity, I work closely with Emily and Father Phil and the rest of the staff on elements of budget and finance and stewardship. So I'm going to kick this off and then turn it over to our clergy to talk more about their vision. So again, this is the kickoff for stewardship, the Answering the Call 2025, and a few things about the church budget, just as we move into it. First of all, we are entirely self-supporting. There are no external revenues that come in to support All Souls. In fact, we pay an annual assessment. It's about 15% of our revenues that go to the diocese for the work that the diocese does. So pledges are extremely important. They make up about 80% of our revenues. They will make up even more now, since, as I'll talk about in a minute, we will not have the Jordan gift and the interest, the investment income from the Jordan gift to rely on. We also will not have Heart Sleep and the revenue from the preschool, at least for another year. So the pledges that are made now constitute the revenues that will come in 2025, and that constitutes the lion's share of the budget that supports everything we do here at All Souls. Just to be clear, Living Waters was an incredibly successful campaign. We raised over twice what we expected, but that's one-time gifts. That's gifts for capital renewal that we probably do every 20, 25 years in order to make sure that our building is safe and habitable. But that is not the same as the operating budget. And then, as I just mentioned, the Jordan gift, which was this remarkably generous gift of about $1 million, we've used that up. We used to use some of the investment income to help fill budget shortfalls. But about $550,000 of that has gone into Living Waters, $95,000 to upgrade the offices at Jordan Court, and then $75,000 for solar on our facilities. So we have no operating income coming from the Jordan gift. All Souls is incredibly vibrant right now, as you probably see every Sunday, as we see actually right now at 9:15. We are on our way to getting to pre-pandemic levels of attendance. We've grown about 50% since the nadir when we were meeting out on the playground. We have a very, very active young persons group, very active children and youth. I mentioned the Living Waters, which was really, we generated more than twice of what we projected on that. And yet, we really need to look at all aspects to reach financial sustainability. As I mentioned, we can no longer rely on the Jordan Court investment income. We don't have the Heart Sleep lease. We do have increasing costs, as everyone does in the Bay Area and across the country. So last December, our pledge total was almost as high as it had ever been. And yet even then, we still had to make very, very tough decisions. For example, having Emily Hansen-Curran move to half-time here at All Souls. That was partly driven by some aspirations, but also it was partly driven by financial decisions. So with this stewardship campaign, we're launching a new season. We have so much opportunity. We have all the elements for a thriving and growing community. We have the priests that we need. We're going to have beautiful facilities. We have great members and a beautiful community. So we just need to have the resources that match our aspirations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Father Phil to talk a little bit about the vision going forward.
And first up, the Reverend Emily Boring to talk about the vision that we have for children and families.
Thank you. Oh my. I have new tape on my face, so it might be louder than usual. So, as we think about this stewardship year, the annual operating campaign, and we stepped back for a minute, what stood out to me was how unique of a community All Souls is. I am still a relative newcomer myself, been here a year, and I have been consistently blown away by how you all do church and the life that is in this parish that is so rare among any communities, among church communities in our world today. So one of the ways that we see that growth and that life is through our children's program. We, last year, during the school year, hit regularly 15 to 20 kids in Sunday school each week. You may have seen the kids when they come up from Sunday school and come back into the nave, and they do things like hand out the newcomer packets and bring up the gifts for the Eucharist. Kids are a central part of life here. And whereas before last year we had about 2 or 3 regular Sunday school teachers, amazing, dedicated people, we recently trained about 10 godly play teachers, and we'll have about 10 more training this fall. Yes, and so, woo! We are finally reaching a sustainable program that is going to match the presence and interest of the kids, and that takes resources, resources for trainings, for materials, and for the administrative time that goes into running a program like that. Over to Phil.
Next up, newcomers. So you saw that number referenced earlier, but a couple weeks ago in our staff meeting, we're using this new software that hopefully you've heard about called Realm. And what it allows us to do is to be able to see who's coming into the congregation and where we need to next meet them. A lot of this existed previously in Emily Hanson-Curran's head alone. And so part of what we've been trying to do is make sure that it doesn't reside just there. And so at our staff meeting, we looked at what's called this Pathway to Membership that we've been working with for about 10 years now, but now we're putting it actually in this program. And we counted 41 newcomers who are on their way towards membership. And that's just the adults. Some of those are households with kids, which is just kind of remarkable for any season of our church, but especially for right now. So it feels like that's really starting to build, and it's just starting to take off. Emily's done a lot of work with building out a welcome team, working with the vestry liaison, Kathy Gosshorn, and so that is starting to take life. So we're just starting to get these structures in place for where this can go next. And the good news is we've got lots of people that are coming in wanting to go there with us.
We also have youth, and we have a unique challenge here that most Episcopal churches would give anything to have, which is that we have so many youth that we don't even know where to meet, and we don't know how to lead them all. We have a fantastic team of lay youth leaders, some of them are in this room, and they're helping us meet the needs and the interests of kids who are from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade. We're very excited to have our new youth-only room after the construction project. And our youth participate in a weekly youth group. We also run immersion trips. And then up here you'll see that we do special events with the whole deanery, youth from other congregations in the area. This last spring we walked on foot from here all the way to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, met the new bishop, and connected with youth from churches that are outside of All Souls. So the youth program, I find, is one of the most exciting areas that All Souls is growing. You might have seen the evidence of that also in our Acolyte program. So we have a lot of teenagers these days who are carrying crosses and torches, and they're so enthusiastic that last week at Bishop's Ranch, we don't usually have acolytes during our Sunday service there, but they volunteered. They asked, what can we do to support this worship and be a part of this church life, which I thought was pretty cool.
So one of the benefits of being at All Souls for the last... See, I've been at All Souls for 16 years now, is that you get to see cycles and seasons. And so being located near the university and the seminaries, and just in this general space where there's lots of people in their 20s and 30s, we've seen folks come in and form groups and then almost inevitably move away to Michigan and New York and Texas and Florida. And what I'm really excited about is right now we are building into another cohort of 20s and 30s. In fact, there's probably now, let's see, how many met at Tommy and Lizzie's recently? It was over 20. people in their 20s and 30s, and they have coalesced into this group that not only wants to meet and share a meal together, but really get into things of spiritual sustenance. And so they recently asked the staff, what could we be studying together? Something that we could either a film clip or a video or something we could read together and then have really in-depth conversation. And so they're meeting on the regular now, both up the way in people's homes and hopefully very soon here on the campus, but that's another group that has really started to come together.
The last part of our life together that we wanted to highlight is a bit harder to put into words. I've called it pastoral care here, but it really has to do with the way that we take care of one another on a deep level as a community. One of the stories that stands out to me from my time at All Souls was the weekend last spring when we held a memorial service for a very beloved All Soulsian, David. And the pews were full. They were as full as they are on an Easter Sunday. People were here to mourn and to celebrate. We sang the same hymns that we do throughout the whole year about resurrection and hope. And then the very next morning, the church was full again, and it was for baptisms. We had a quadruple baptism, a bunch of wonderful children, and we were here again just a day later after memorializing a passing to celebrate new life. And that, to me, exemplifies what we do here and why it's different than secular spaces and secular communities. We serve together and eat together and pray together and cry together and sing together. And there's a real sense of holding one another up. And that, to me, is the kind of connection that we long for, the kind that is so needed in our world at this time, and the kind of connection that is very hard to find. So that is one of the things that I see as of utmost value at All Souls, something that we want to continue to invite others in and extend that welcome to anyone who is seeking.
So one of the things that we have been working on for the last couple years now is the Isaiah Project. The vestry decided well over a year ago to tithe 10% of what we brought into the campaign in gifts to be able to give to those in the wider community and specifically towards racial reparations, to the repairs of the breach that exist here in the East Bay. And so we are very, very close to finding out who those organizations will be. If you might have read in the Pathfinder, we solicited 8 organizations in this area to say, we think you're working in this direction and we would like to support that. All 8 enthusiastically applied. And so the Isaiah team over the next week or so is going to be deciding and discerning who are those 3 or 4 organizations that we would like to support. I think this has the potential to be the largest focus of energy in terms of serving the wider community that we have had at All Souls since the beginning of the Open Door Dinner, which is over 30 years ago. And so I am anticipating this sense of energy and movement and walking alongside in really profound ways starting this next year, which comes actually at a pretty profound time, as Nathan said earlier. As things are coalescing here, we can begin to see how we can serve our neighbors in new and different ways. Which all means that we need to structurally look at what we have to make this community go. And so next year, we are anticipating that Emily and I will still be here in our positions. Emily will also be working on a book, so hopefully by this time next year, we'll know how that goes. And something will be very different on our staff in that the newest Episcopal Church in the Diocese of California hopefully will be launched in 2025. And Emily Hanson-Curran will be doing that launching. And so we've been anticipating this for years, and it's actually going to happen. And so in April of 2025, Emily Hanson-Curran, who's been half-time with us, will go to full-time in that launch. And we as a congregation will have to decide what we do next. And what we do next will in large part be determined by what we give towards it. And one of the areas of focus that we have discerned over and over and over again is that the areas that we feel most drawn to, and these were two of the three goals that the vestry decided on this year, were in welcome and in kinship. And so all those things you heard us talk about are elements of those two areas. Specifically, of course, with newcomers, but also for people who are in this congregation who are looking to grow deeper in their spiritual life and want to do it in this community. And so there are different ways that that can happen.
So thinking about that vision of increasing welcome and kinship and this question of who will fill that role, we wanted to outline a few scenarios of how the resources we have, particularly the resources we raised this year, could align with that goal. So what you see up here first is if our pledge levels remain the same as they did last year. This would have implications for our staff and our ministry and the way we take care of our building. What it would mean is that once Emily leaves us in April, we would not be able to fill that position. The position that used to be full-time and then went to half-time would be at 0 time starting in May. We also would have to see a 15% reduction in our ministry budgets. So that's things like less hospitality, less resources for welcome and kinship, less that goes to music in particular, which is a large and valuable part of our budget. And we wouldn't be able to have any funds for ongoing building maintenance to preserve the work and the exciting developments that we're making through Living Waters.
So if we wanted to stay at the July 1st, 2024 levels of staffing. And why we chose that date is because that's when Dent was still here as our associate for music. That would be a half-time associate for music at a half-time, associate for kinship and welcome. I would be at full-time, Diana Markley, our admin, at half-time, and Emily at 0.95. Specifically because that allows her days to write. That would be the diocesan mandated COLA increase for salaried and hourly staff. No new funds for building maintenance. So just to maintain where we have been in 2024, that would be an increase to get to the pledge level of $771,000.
Option is that we increase our resources through giving. So we have kind of two visions of what that could look like. Answering the call about the potential we have at All Souls, Plan A, we would increase Emily Hanson-Curran's role, the new Associate for Kinship and Welcome, to full-time once we hit May, once she leaves. And we would also be able to increase our ministry budgets, so that staff power would also be able to use more resources in order to do what we do. And we'd be able to put $25,000 toward building maintenance. So that would be the next step in giving.
And then the last option that the stewardship team has seen in conjunction with our finance folks is that in addition to an associate for welcome and kinship being at full time, we would also add a half-time position that would help out with children and family and communications. And that there would be a 30% increase in our ministry to be able to fund towards those areas, and then $40,000 a year towards building maintenance. One of the things that that happens when you don't do a capital campaign on, say, 2/3 of your physical plant in 50 years, is that lots of things need to be attended to. So that's been downstairs, that's been heating, plumbing, electrical, things that you will not see, but you will hopefully feel. And there will be things that are not part of the scope that we have done as part of Living Waters, that are part of the regular deferred maintenance that we need to do as a congregation. One of the things that All Souls has leaned on to all too often is reacting to problems of our physical plant rather than being proactive in maintaining them over time.
So with this spectrum of goals, of ways to answer the call in front of us, I'm going to turn it over to Richard, who will explain a bit more about the numbers behind all of this.
Good morning, everyone. A couple of things to follow up on. One is that this is the vision that the annual operating campaign team and the vestry and the staff have put together, but ultimately the vestry will make these decisions based on the resources they have. This is an illustration of what they might do, but the final decision lies with the vestry. Wanted to point out a couple of things about the numbers and the budget that underlies this. This is a spreadsheet, which is not what you're supposed to project on a presentation, but I love spreadsheets. And there are copies of them in the back, so you can see those there. But one of the things that happened this year was that All Souls received 2 bequests from former parishioners that showed up unexpectedly in July, I think it was, that helped us meet our budget this year. And without those, we would have had a large gap that we would have had to find some other way to fill. Hard Sleep left. And so what stays constant in all of this is the assessment to the diocese, which is calculated at $138,000, and then our overhead, operating this place and paying the utilities and the insurance and stuff is constant. And so what we can change is the staffing, the ministry budgets, and the amount we spend on buildings. So this information is in detail in the back, and I can get it for you anytime you need. And so the question is, how do we respond to this need? And you might be that my answer is stewardship. And I'm reminded by Phil all of the time that stewardship is everything we do with everything we have. And so in the past, All Souls has treated stewardship as a 4-week period in the fall when we raise operating funds for the next year. Our goal now is to expand the function of stewardship in the congregation, make it a year-round process where we're constantly looking at the resources that we have and making sure that we're using them appropriately. So this is where we've been up until now, where we've accepted planned gifts, which people have made bequests, we haven't turned them down, but we haven't been out asking for people and helping people think about that. And we've done the Living Waters campaign, but that's winding down. And the stewardship campaign has been just in the fall. So now we're moving to a different version of the stewardship committee, where the committee itself will sort of think about the overall function of stewardship. They'll coordinate with the vestry. They'll support individual committees. Whoops, sorry, backwards. No, what I'm looking for is this. So where's that red button? There we go. Oh, there we go. We'll have a committee for physical plant. Once the construction is done downstairs and here, we'll be able to interact with more groups in the community. We'll be able to rent the space in a different way. There's conversations going on now about renting the preschool space in a much different way than we've used it before. And the committee there will be looking forward to making sure that we're doing that appropriately. The annual operating committee, which is what used to be the stewardship committee, will focus on this fall pledge drive, but also keeping the focus on our resources throughout the year. Like everything we do throughout the year is based on stewardship and the pledges. And whether that's coffee and donuts in March, or the Big Sur camping trip, or open door dinner, it all relies on the pledging that we do now. We're also setting up a committee to work on major gifts and receiving planned giving. We'll be soliciting people and helping people figure out how that might fit for them. Living Waters will eventually go away as we finish that work, but that's the structure that we're looking forward to going forward, and hopefully it won't just be limited. Stewardship will be an all-year process, not just for the fall. So, how does 2025 pledging work? Working with the staff, we've identified 224 households that are part of All Souls that we're going to communicate with to try to raise the money that we need for next year. So 151 of those households were here last year and pledged. They pledged a total of $650,000, an average of $4,321. The distribution of how that giving happened looks like that. And so there were, that's probably 13 people who gave between $0 and $500. There were 52 people who gave between $2,500 and $1,000. There were probably 3 people who gave between $15,000 and $20,000. And so we'll be coming to everyone asking for participation in the pledge campaign. The biggest piece we have is that 72 households that we identify as currently active in All Souls did not pledge last year. 42 of those households had not pledged in the last 4 years and had been here. 42 households had not pledged at all, but some of those may be brand new. So part of our challenge is to move people from the 72 people here into some sort of giving for the church. And frequently, people say, well, how should I think about giving? And I have some words about that, but nobody has better words about that than Phil.
That was convenient. No. So I think first and foremost, this phrase here, it's not equal gifts, but equal generosity. My experience as a pastor in this community is we have lots of folks approaching their finances in very different ways. And so it would be foolhardy and ridiculous, actually, to approach it as if everybody were in the same place and could be expected to give in the same way. However, I really do believe very deeply in that giving is the spiritual discipline of generosity. And that the spiritual discipline of generosity is what opens up so many things in our lives and in the wider world. And so as people have come to me, like they've come to Richard over the years, to say, how will I give? We've identified many ways that people do this. Adjusting, you're looking at the average and then adjusting from there. I had a friend many years ago who was a young adult in an Episcopal church, not here at All Souls, a different Episcopal church in this diocese. And when the average pledge came out and she saw what the average pledge was and how much she was giving, she decreased her pledge. Because she was like, wait a minute, like, I know people are in better situations than I'm in. But that is one way people look at it. Another is keying your pledge to other purchases in your life. Some of you heard me say this, but at an annual meeting several years ago, when I read from the annual report of 50 years previous, the stewardship chair, who wasn't Richard Lynch at the time, said that he wanted All Soulsians to consider giving to All Souls at least as much per week as they spend on their cigarettes. That was the measure. You may have a different measure for how you give. Another is giving a percentage of the pledging goal, right? So you saw a different number of goals. That goal has not yet been determined for 2025, but taking a percentage of that and giving towards that. I remember at least one vestry member several years ago saying, all right, so what's our overall number, and therefore what am I responsible for? And then lastly, a classic way to approach this has been tithing, and the biblical approach of giving 10% of your first fruits away, which is the way that the vestry chose to approach the funding of the Isaiah Project last year. To me, the number 10% is not the important part of that. In fact, actually, it was really interesting. At that meeting where the vestry made that decision, we had talked some about it, but not fully. And so as we started talking about it more and more, one of our vestry members gave a very eloquent statement about what the first fruits are about and why we approach our lives all throughout our lives that way. And then towards the end of the meeting, there was another vestry member who said, you know, I came to this meeting really feeling like 10% was too much. But as I've been hearing more and more about why we're doing this and how we can approach this, I'm wondering, why just 10%? Like, couldn't it be more? Now, in the end, the decision was to give 10% away. But what I find to be most important about the act of giving in any amount to anything is that it is an intentional process, that you know what you're giving away and what it represents of all you have been given. And so that, to me, is the most important part about the decisions that we each make in our household between now and October 27th. Well, how about that? But you may remember, if you've been around All Souls for a bit, this chart. If you would like a copy of that chart to know what percentage and what amount you have to give you the number, we can help you with that. And as always, Richard is glad to be in conversation with you to help you come to that. And that said, there's a new approach that we are looking at for this year.
Thank you, Phil. So we're going to do a couple of things different this year. In the past, we have not attached any goal to our giving. And this year, with the 4 different scenarios, we're going to articulate the goal for each scenario. And some of them are big, well, they're all big numbers, and some of them are bigger than we've currently been doing. I think, if I'm remembering this off the top of my head, the same operations goal requires a 10% increase in our overall pledging, and that's not a 10% increase for each person. If we draw more people into the pledging community, then that number doesn't have to go up quite so much. Still not the right number. The answering the call A, which is getting Emily H.C.'s position back to full-time, requires a 28% increase in our pledging levels. And the adding the communications and children's person requires a 38% increase, I think. And so as you think about this over the next 5 weeks, think about these goals and how you can participate. And so what I'd like to ask now for the next 5 weeks, issue the call really, is for you to think about this with 3 different ways. One is see All Souls with the hope and the vision that Emily and Phil articulate and bring to us every Sunday. Consider a pledge amount that's a good fit. I've been asking people at All Souls for money for quite some time, and people say, well, is this a good number? And my answer is almost always, I hope, is it a good fit for you? And when the conversation frequently goes, well, what does that mean? And finally, I think I have an answer, which is think about your connection to All Souls. Is it a place that feeds your heart? Is it a place that feeds your family, your spirit? How do you connect to this place in this community? And separately, consider your capacity. Often, I have conversations where people say, All Souls means everything to me, and I have virtually no money. That person is not, that person is not the person that we want to give, $10,000 in a pledge. We want all the pledges to fit, and that's the connection between the capacity, it's the relationship between the capacity and the connection that you feel for All Souls. So over the next 5 weeks, we're going to be highlighting the ways that All Souls plays a big role in people's lives and the connection that people have to it as a reminder to us all that this place is really special and provides so much for us. And as you consider your pledge for 2025, remember that it's just for 2025. This is probably a unique year. We've just lost the Heart Sleep lease, and that may be coming back partway through the year. It'll just depend on how that sorts out. But we're also beginning to ask people for larger gifts, planned giving. So where we are next year, coming back and asking for more money, could be entirely different. We could be renting our facilities, we could be receiving other gifts, and the needs of the parish may be different. So don't feel like this is a gift that has to stay at some level, some uniquely high level on an ongoing basis. Think about what can work for 2025, because that's what this conversation is about, just this year. So that's my ask for you all for the next 5 weeks. Think about us with hope and vision, consider an amount that's a good fit, and just remember it's for 2025. So in 3 weeks, I think it is, 4 weeks, you'll get an invitation to support All Souls with the pledge. And the letter, there will be a letter from Emily and Phil, and there'll be a letter from Maggie Cook, our giving secretary. And for the first time, we're going to suggest a specific range of support for each person, just as a way to help people contextualize their giving and the church's needs. Then on October 27th, we'll be having the in-gathering services. In the morning, we'll be having our regular service here where people fill out pledge cards and bring them up to the altar. And that evening, we'll be having a potluck at St. Mary Magdalene over on Henry Street, and that'll be at 6 o'clock. On December 8th, the campaign will end, and the vestry will start making its decisions based on the resources it has available. We've talked a lot about different scenarios here, and I just want to underline again that it's ultimately the vestry, your elected representatives, that will make this decision, and they're just looking to see what resources they have to work with. And I hope this community will respond with the generosity and the vision and hope that it has in so many other circumstances, and give them a lot of resources to walk into 2025. So that's the presentation, and surprisingly, we're done early. So if anybody has any questions, we can try to answer them. Kaki. 27th. Oh, sorry. October 27th. Lenore. Right, RMD.
And I don't know if this is what you call your planned giving kind of thing, but it also, for just this coming year, might be a good way of having money given directly to the church for next year's pledge, and then not get taxed on it because we're giving it that way. So
Right.
that's one of the things that we're looking at doing for this upcoming year, is doing our pledge for next year in a lump sum. That way also we've got more advantage to have that money in advance for things.
Right.
And also, we don't get taxed on it, so it's an idea.
Right. Well, and it underlines the importance of a pledge versus the same amount contributed in the plate each week. It's the ability of the vestry to plan for it. And there are a number of people here who are much more versed on the intricacies of RMD contributions than I am, and I'd be happy to hook anybody up with those people if you'd like. I'm looking at you, Sarah Kerr. Yes, sir. Right. Right. Yes. Well, that's a good point. And so what we'll be asking for on the 27th is a pledge for the whole year. And so say it's $1,200, then you would easily fulfill that by $100 a month. It could be mailed in. It could be, the preferred way would be through AutoPay, through your bank, so that it just rolls that way. But as long as your name, as long as you have a pledge and your name is identifiably on the pledge, then Maggie Cook has the ability to match it up to your pledge, and now Realm will help her keep track of that as we go. Sure. Anyone else? All right. Well, we have bagels from Bageltopia, which a friend of Martine Ortega's has started, and they're reputed to be the best bagels in the East Bay, or as good as New York bagels. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say best. And I'll be around and happy to talk about stewardship anytime. Thank you.